Hello my 7 deadly sins family and friends, welcome to a new type of video. I'm starting a mini series. There won't be very often and I'll explain why. This is Cracked or Sacked, where we try out different main DPSs. We've seen a lot of Meliodas lately and lots of creators are doing it, so I thought we'd test other main DPS here or there. And see if they're cracked DPS or whether or not they should be sacked as a DPS. And today we're going to try out the win team, mainly Elaine DPS. So her kit actually sounds pretty good. We can use her wand, and we're going as free to play as possible in a sense because we're only using SR weapons. Yes, they are all maxed, but in previous videos I've explained how easy it is to grind dupes for SR weapons. There's some very cheap SR weapons you can craft every week. It's just 6 silver and 10 blue elite boss items. Anyway, let's go over the team that I've decided to try out. So let's start with Elaine, the main DPS we're looking at. And why I think that she could potentially be a pretty decent DPS. Firstly, we have her passive. So each attack on an enemy with wind burst activated, she gets an extra 33% crit chance. That is pretty insane. And then her special attack, which I think is a bit rubbish because not only is it low damage, only 66% of attack, but the range is very low, so you can't even really use it for the normal skill cooldown because you're just going to get hit. Her main source of damage that she can use repeatedly is her normal skill. A decent multiplier, especially as you have 3 uses of it, which is 202%. But it also increases her crit damage up to 60%, which is kind of crazy. So this has 3 charges, you can use it 3 times. And then we've got her ultimate, which is just a big chunk of damage and reduces this cooldown by a lot. Basically, nearly enough for you to get another charge. So like 4 charges in total, basically. To get Wind Burst, we've got Tristan. We can use his longsword weapon. You don't really need anything good. Any longsword weapon will work. And chance, if you go with a wind bead, you get a legendary bead and craft into a wind bead. You can look for wind burst efficiency to go a bit better. But on wind burst, he gives all your allies an extra 15% wind damage, which is very good. Another bonus. So we've got 60% crit damage plus 15% wind damage here. Because mine is P5, we're going to get 200 burst gauge from his special attack, and it also bleeds. This is very important because we'll showcase this in a second. And then if bleeding, that's another 200 burst gauge. So this can really charge up the burst gauge quite fast. He also, with his ultimate, which is only costs 2 magic points, 2 pips, the 2 circles at the bottom, increases wind burst efficiency by 30%. Once we've gone over all kits, I'm going to go and do their engravings afterwards, just so you know. Next we have Hauser. I've decided to go with his gloves because that's more of a supporting DPS role compared to main DPS and more like barrier support DPS. So let's look at his skills. When an allied hero attacks a bleeding enemy, their wind damage increases by 20%. So that's another 20%. So we've got 35% wind damage because of bleeding and burst. We also have an up to 15% crit resistance reduced just from Hauser, from this ability here. And then this can have a chance to reset this one, so you can use this because it's like this is a 2 caster, so this allows you to kind of use this multiple times. And then also his basic attack also allows this one to reset. And then if you want to use his ultimate, if you have enough charges, that is, and you don't use, say, Tristan's, you get another 30% crit damage. So that's already 90% crit damage just from these 3 units and 35% wind damage. Right, and then we've got Slater. He's kind of like a flex pick. You can choose someone else to maybe support you, like a shielder. So you've got the nunchucks, Deanne, even gloves Deanne could work potentially. You got Gila, but if you want a bit more damage, then go with Slater. I thought he worked quite well because his passive increases your allies' crit damage if an enemy is bleeding, and we're going to be bleeding a lot. We've got bleeding here. He can bleed. I'll show you in a second how. And then if you do build these guys out and they are going to do a bit of damage, I haven't at the moment because I wanted to focus on Elaine. You could have even more bleed damage increase from there. And then if you didn't use Tristan or Hauser's ultimate, you could also use Slater's for another 25 increase crit damage. Not crit damage, my apologies, just damage in general, an extra 25% increased damage in general. So, as for gear, armor wise, Tristan and Slater really doesn't matter. His SR engraving is okay because it means that his debuffs last longer, but I want to get a bit more health on him, so I just put this random set on. Same for Tristan, and these boots are quite nice because it has all element burst efficiency. As for the accessories, with Tristan, I've gone with the craftable elemental burst efficiency set. So this is what I use on Jericho, and it's really strong. I've got an extra nearly 6% there, an extra 15% just from the set, and these don't really do anything. Doesn't matter what he has on accessories, we're just really using him for his passive to increase crit damage. If you haven't seen much about Slater, I do have a video on it, but he's really good, like I said, with the crit damage. He also reduces crit resistance by 20%, so that's 35% in total. Now this is a big one. Hauser's kinds of sounds insane. The stats don't matter too much unless you've built him to do a bit of damage. It is this. So when you're landing your special attack, that's this ability that can reset quite often. You reduce the enemy's crit defense by 50%, which is huge, 50%. So your crits are doing way, way more damage. And he also has a chance to do a bit more damage and bleed. And then Elaine's, which is quite nice as well. Finally, each crit damage boost gained, which she's going to get each time she throws her normal ability. She can reduce the cooldown of her normal ability, so you can use it even more. But also, she gets up to 72% wind attack. And again, that's kind of massive, you know. Unfortunately, I didn't get great engraving stats, just crit damage. And obviously, we're using the Arachne set for the 10% crit chance. This is just not correct. I promise you it's 10%. And then crit chance here. So, Elaine's stats. Overall, we've got 17.7k attack. That's from all her weapons with their limit breaks, and also we're getting a third of this on top of it, of both of these. So 17.7k is not too bad, to be honest. If we look at her stat details, she has base 67% crit chance. So when there's a wind burst and she attacks an enemy, she's going to get an extra 33% chance, which means every single hit she does, she's going to automatically crit. And remember, we've got her 6% crit damage from her. We've got 30% from Slater. And then if Hauser ults as well, we've got another 30%. That's an extra 120%. So she could nearly have 220% crit damage, which is huge. Unfortunately, I've got no normal skill damage, and I've got no wind damage. Those would be very good multipliers. That's just luck of the draw, really. But hey ho. Anyway, that is the overall look over the team. Let's get into some fighting and test how she goes. We're going to first do Red Demon, and then we're going to go to the Toad in the Fairy King Forest, and then lastly we're going to do Orgot. So I will see you over at Red Demon. Okay, we're here ready for Red Demon. Let's just do a quick rundown of the rotation that we'll be doing to try and nuke the boss as fast as possible. We're going to start with Slater, and we're going to get his Q charged up to get the crit resistance down as well as the bleed. So he will have, and we'll get an extra 30% crit damage from that. We're going to tag in Tristan to get a 300 burst gauge boost. We're going to ult with him for more burst efficiency. And then we're going to use his abilities to try and get the burst gauge filled. And we might dodge around a bit and wait until the burst gauge filled. We're going to switch to Hauser and quickly use his abilities so that we can get the crit defense debuff, as well as other buffs as we have talked about previously. And then we're going to switch into Elaine and do as much nuke damage as possible. So, let's see how this goes. We know Meliodas is insanely strong. I don't think she'll be quite as strong as what we've seen burst-wise, but hopefully with all the buffs and 100% crit chance and a bunch of crit damage, etc., it shouldn't be too bad. Especially as these world bosses, at least Red Demon, doesn't have that many resistances at all. So we'll charge up, we'll hit this, get out of the way. We're going to... Oh, we didn't even get the tag. So let's get the tag, switch in, get that burst bar, swizzle through. Again, I forgot to... Oh, I do this every time. But that'll help us get the burst bar up. If I was smarter, I'm going to dodge out the way. Hauser, going to Q. I did that just so then he would be gone, and then we're going to burst with Elaine. That's not bad. I think I need to attack one time before I burst with Elaine, because I did not get my crit chance until after my first E hit. But even so, wasn't terrible. As soon as we got to Elaine, she was able to decently knock down the boss quite hard. So that's pretty good. I'm not sure if I mentioned with Elaine, I'm using this SR weapon, which it gives a bit more extra wind attack. But with critical hits that she's always going to do, she has a 50% chance to get between 10 or 50% extra crit damage, which is quite nice. Anyway, I'm going to heal up, and I will see you at the Toad. Okay, we're here at the Toad. We're going to try and do the same rotation this time again, but we're going to try and remember to use Tristan's ultimate. This Toad is obviously a lot tankier than the Red Demon, so let's see how this goes. He usually spins right near the start, so I want to be careful I don't get trapped in it. Tag in. Okay, he's spitting that out, that's fine. Okay, I'm such an idiot, I forgot to ult. So silly of me. Okay, Hauser. Get the crit defense down. And then we're going to max Q, E, sorry. I'm going to ult. E again. And I got hit, but that's okay. So first rotation, that was about 2/3. Well, not terrible, but I kind of expected there'd be a bit more like 3/4 or more than 3/4 really. I'm not going to use my ult because I want to save it to use for Elaine again. Okay, let's go to Hauser, get his debuffs again. Try and get out this way. This freaking spin attack. Okay, there we go. We get free reign now to nuke. Ult again, and then it's down. So two cycles of the burst. Not too bad. I do think it should be higher though. The amount of crit damage we're getting like 180 to over 200 crit damage plus the amount of a wind attack we're getting from her. I'm a little disappointed, but maybe Orgot can redeem us. So I'm gonna cut here, heal up, and we're gonna do an Orgot run, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, a burst combo can do at least half of his health, but let's see. Okay, we're back here with Orgot. Let's see how this goes. He does move around a lot, but not nearly as much as Gila. So hopefully we can burst him down within the 5 minutes that we've got to do Hell. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. Hit him with that. That's nice. Go to Tristan. Ult, remember to ult. I forgot it for my Q, but that's okay. Nearly got full ult gauge already. I bet if I remember to use my ult before my Q. Oh, that's unfortunate timing. Do this again. Okay, gonna spam. Spam's got lots of buffs right now, lots of buffs. Gonna ult. Lots of buffs. Okay, we've got, with her ult, we've got him down to just below half. It's not too bad, considering, but it seems like a lot of her damage actually comes from her ultimate. Her E's are doing, sadly, not very much damage. So that is quite sad, really. Like, really heavily reliant on ultimate. Okay, he's stunned now, so I'm not going to worry about too much. Get the burst bar, get the buffs. Switch to Elaine. E. See, like 27 crits, 53k crits, like twice. It's kind of low, not going to lie. I'm going to ult. Yeah. So yeah, 1 minute 48. Not terrible. I just would have liked to really see a bit more damage from her E's. Maybe up to like the 75k mark with each of the hits. Because it's a projectile, so that they're easily dodgeable if the enemy moves, you see? And the amount of buffs she had, you would have seen down here, I just stacked with buffs to only do about 100k per hit. In total, and then her ult was doing like really good damage, actually. I guess it's not too bad, heavily reliant on ultimate, but yeah. Well, let's leave it here when we have a bit of a discussion. Okay, let's have a chat about her. So, first off, if you want me to showcase this win team versus Gila or the Dragon, I can do that, and I'll post shorts of it instead, maybe. Or maybe I just don't think it's worth it. It's going to take too long, because Orgot is probably the easiest one out there, and it took about 2 minutes just to kill Orgot, and you've only got 5. And with Gila, she moves around so much, and it takes you like 30 seconds to a minute just to get there. So really you've only got 4 minutes. And I'm not sure how viable that would be. But again, I can do it. I'm happy to do that. Or maybe I'll make a couple shorts for you guys to see that. But let's have a chat, like I said. And I'm going to put on the screen for you to see. And we can calculate all the damage that she has been getting with all these buffs. Let's start with the crit damage buffs that she gets. Because that's probably easier to talk about. So we're going to get 30% crit damage from Slater when the enemy's bleeding, and it's going to be consistently bleeding. We get an extra 60% from her E. So that is 90% extra crit damage, which would take her up to 180 with what I've got. And then she also can get between 10 and 50% crit damage. So let's meet that in the middle, and let's say an extra 30. So that's an extra 120% crit damage, which is a ton of crit damage, especially when we are guaranteeing her crit every single time. On top of the 120% crit damage, she's getting 15% wind damage, plus an extra 20% wind damage for 35% wind damage. So that's quite nice. The enemy has between 35% and 15% crit resistance reduction, as well as 50% crit defense reduction. So our crits will be doing even more damage. Now, if we were not to use Tristan's ultimate to get the burst bar quicker, which to be honest, I don't think we need to use. That's more for speed running, I suppose, to get that quicker, so when she can do her damage. We could either get another 30% crit damage, which would equal 150% crit damage, or we could get 25% overall damage from Slater. All of that is a ton of buffs. So much buffs. It's absolutely insane. And for her to only do 50k each hit of her E, I'm kind of disappointed, really. And then, from what I could see, even her ultimate, it says 402% of attack. I'm wondering if that is total over the whole duration, because I was only seeing about 25k hits. So yeah, I think I'm going to vote after all this consideration, and I'm sad to say I think Elaine DPS needs to be sacked. Unfortunately, I just don't think she can really stand up of being a top tier DPS. It's just not high enough in my opinion. Please let me know what you think. Comment sacked or cracked in your opinion. Obviously she could get stronger if you get lots and lots of dupes. I think sadly her most insane one is from her P10, because instead of 2 projectiles there's 4, and then the rest is just tiny bits of damage, really little bits of damage. Disappointing amount of damage, really. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, cracked or sacked. Let me know what next team you want me to look out, or element you want me to look out, or just character in general, for main DPS wise. I have all of them but King. I've also started a free-to-play account, and I'm trying to grind it up quick enough for us to test things out and showcase some things. I was lucky enough to get both Jericho and Manny, so I'm going to be doing an ice build with them. So maybe we not do ice build yet, and we'll just do that with a free-to-play. But we could do fire build, we could do like lightning build with Gil Thunder and Drake. We could do earth build with Deanne as the main DPS. If you wanted to see me doing wind again, but I'll do Hauser as main DPS, I'm happy to try that out. I'm not sure what else there is there DPS wise. But yeah, because we've got a few fire ones here. We could do either or any of these 3. I'm not sure how well Tiora could be DPS wise, but we've got Gila, Tristan and Slater that could potentially be fire DPS. So yeah, let me know what you think. The next one should be in part 2 of this series, and I'll start prepping and leveling the team up, and it should be a bit of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.